I'm Danica Leung, and I wrote a graphic novel about my mental health journey during the pandemic. It was chosen for Speaking Our Truths, the Ism Youth Files, a project produced by Media Rights in Portland, Oregon. Many young people faced mental health challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. I definitely reached a mental low during the pandemic myself. A big part of this was the social isolation and loneliness that came from online schooling. I'm Danica Leung, 19 years old in Portland, Oregon, a rising sophomore at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am one of the writers of the Ism Youth Files project. I titled my graphic novel Good Kid because I grew up fixated on the word good and the expectations of what it means as an Asian American kid. One panel in my novel shows good to mean being an academic overachiever or to be extracurricularly excellent. The next panel shows me being asked how I'm doing. And though I say I'm doing good, like I'm physically and mentally well, I point out that no matter how I feel, I kind of always have to say I'm doing good. It's as if we're not allowed to be suffering and to not be well in our society. Which begs the question I ask in the next scene to a therapist. How do I know when I'm better? The next two youth writers have asked that question on their own mental health journeys. They both have experienced and survived life-altering trauma and sought help during the pandemic. Episode 4. Recovery from Trauma. Isabella Santana is 18 and lives in Torrance, California. She and her two sisters are triplets. They were competitive and fought a lot. During the pandemic, their relationship worsened.
We fought often. We were mean and nasty to each other. You know, kids can be mean sometimes, and we were pretty mean to each other. So we did not have a good relationship, but we still cared for each other because at the end of the day, we're sisters. And they definitely took note that something was up because when I was 12, things started changing drastically for me. I got really angry. It was anger. I was so angry. Like, we're talking like I threw a vase at my sister once because I was so angry. Like screaming, punching things, throwing things, just really, really bad anger. And then I'd get mad at myself for it. And I'd feel terrible because I didn't know where it was coming from. Because I'm not a mean person. I would consider myself a nice person. So all that anger and like throwing things and saying mean things and hurting people I love, it was really out of character for me. So it was very jarring. It just really hurt my self-esteem because I started thinking to myself, what's wrong with me? Why am I acting like this? Why can't I control my emotions? And my sisters took note of that. It was like glass. Like, as if I was walking on thin ice. Like, at school, I could maintain my composure because I felt like I had no choice to maintain my composure. And I think that was a problem. I like try to keep it all together. So when I got home, any little thing would just set me apart. And then just everything would, like the glass would crack. I would fall. I would just go completely stuck in my emotions, completely devoured by my anger. And it's like my vision would go red. That's all I could do. All I could think was how angry I was and what I was going to do next.
Isabella wrote her essay about how the fixation on food and dieting during the COVID-19 lockdown changed the way she looked at herself.
Probably was the worst thing that ever happened for me in terms of my mental health. In my essay, I talk about it. It started with the food. Like, I this is a whole social frenzy to like get fit. You know, don't gain the COVID-19. Don't, you know, everyone was out there running and lifting weights. You know, the gym material was out of stock on Amazon. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to continue. I was on a diet before COVID started. And I was about to just be like, this isn't worth my time, this is my energy and just move on. But then COVID hit. There was this social frenzy to like get fit, lose weight, eat healthy. And that diet turned into anorexia, basically. It spiraled really, really quick into really scary, like scarily underweight and not healthy in any way. You know, I started because I thought I was going to get healthy. I thought losing weight was going to make me healthy, which it didn't. It did not. It made me extremely unhealthy, extremely weak. I was 15 and I was having like the heart issues of like an 80-year-old because my heart was so weak from malnutrition. And it's like terrifying. it would have never gotten that bad had it not been for the pandemic, because I was alone in my room. I had all the time in the world to exercise because there was basically no school for me. My parents were busy trying to figure out like what they were gonna do, so I could wake up like at 11 a.m., eat like a banana for breakfast, and then not eat till like 1:30. It was just terrible.
The dieting affected her physical health so much, she sought medical help.
Yeah, because when I went to a dietitian sometime around May, and she was like, sweetie, you're not, like, you have to stop. Like, you're not going to make it if you keep on doing this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to you. But then I started like feeling the heart palpitations right around that time. And it was terrifying. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Like, this can't, I can't, 15, what is happening? And then later, I don't know when the shift happened, but something shifted. And I was like, oh, wait, I can die. I was like, that wouldn't be too bad. Maybe then, at least if I die, I'll die thin. At least if I die, I won't have to deal with like all these thoughts in my head and feeling, worthless all the time. And from there, it slowly started growing and growing and growing and growing.
But it was her once combative sisters who figured out what was going on and alerted their parents.
I was just really sad. And I felt terrible about myself and my worth and my body. And, I was fighting with my family because they knew that I was doing this. And they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, you guys know what we were fighting because they were trying to get me to stop. I was trying to continue. And it was just horrible. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of having an eating disorder. I'm sick of, being sick and feeling like I'm dying every day. And B, I'm sick of feeling this way and feeling sad and depressed and just worthless all the time.
Finding help for Isabella nearby during the pandemic proved difficult, as she writes in her essay More Than a Joke. In June of 2020, her family loaded up the car and drove out of California to Wicksburg, Arizona, so Isabella could get help.
I spent 2.5 months at an eating disorder facility where I faked recovery and happiness. I came home in a good physical condition, but eager to relapse. I wanted to relapse, and that's exactly what I did. I took no time in seeking in old behaviors and introducing new ones. As I did, my mental state worsened. My depression severity shot up exponentially. With it came the reintroduction of suicidal thoughts, which only seemed to worsen as my dosage of Prozac increased. This hopelessness and despair led me to the final resort, suicide. I remember my first attempt in November quite vividly. I found hydrocodone in my mom's medicine cabinet, painkillers prescribed to her after a back injury. I sneaked 12 pills into my room. One night, I took 10, saving 2 for the next time I wanted to get high. I really had no idea what they were going to do to me. All I knew is that I wanted my pain to end. I handed myself over to death that day, hoping that it would take me away from this world. It didn't happen. I woke up the next morning extremely hungover, but alive. Here's the thing about suicide. It's a parasite. I used every single waking second following my first attempt planning my next attempt. This time, I would starve myself to death. This time, I would succeed.
According to the Center for Suicide Prevention and Research, suicide is the second leading cause of death for individuals in the U.S. aged 5 to 24 years old. Youth suicide rates also increased during the pandemic, and a history of prior suicide attempts is the most important risk factor for further attempts. In her essay, Isabella wrote candidly about her suicide attempts. Sometimes, anger and aggression can be signs of depression in youth.
People walked on eggshells around me, worried that if they said the wrong thing, I would attempt suicide. My relationships with my family fractured as I became more violent and aggressive. My self-destructive behaviors completely spiraled out of control. I made multiple trips to psychiatric hospitals, riding in ambulances and even a cop car to make sure I would get there safely. At one point, I felt so exhausted. Not exhausted of living, but exhausted of feeling suicidal. It took up all my mental and physical energy. I spent so many nights curled up in a ball in my bed, begging for the thoughts to stop, but they wouldn't go away. I would try so hard to focus on something else, but a little frustration or inconvenience upset me so much that suicide felt like the only answer to my problem. My life felt like it was falling apart. The little things that gave me stability falling into a chasm of emptiness. My fight against my demons came closer to its end, and I wasn't the victor. The weight of existence, the pain of living when feeling suicidal crushed me slowly. I tightroped between life and death, dangerously teetering towards death. I tried so hard to keep myself afloat, but all I did was sink deeper into my thoughts and feelings. I couldn't enjoy anything. I saw no meaning in life. I convinced myself that my life would be painful forever. I felt helpless. My thoughts sucked me under and took all the joy out of my life. I needed someone to save me, but only I could save myself. Nobody could save me from me. I couldn't stop my behaviors. It seemed as if my fate to die by suicide was sealed. And yet, I survived. By some miracle, I made it to the other side. I found happiness and meaning in life again. I dedicated myself to my recovery and worked hard every single day to stay mentally stable. It took all my energy and effort, and it couldn't have been more worth it. My views of life completely changed as I went through my recovery. The thing that changed the most was my view on suicide. In the past, I considered it as a joke, later as a last resort, then as something comforting. Now, I see suicide for what it really is, a lie. Suicide tells its victims that others will be happy without him. This couldn't be further from the truth. My loved ones suffered so deeply while I remained in an unstable condition.
Isabella credits her loved ones and her family for her recovery.
And at first, my parents were really against me getting treatment. They didn't think it was necessary. They thought like we could do it as a family together ourselves and work through it. But they soon learned that that wasn't the case. And once they learned that that was the case, they went all in and they just did as much research as they could. They appealed insurance many, many times to get the proper coverage that I needed for my treatment. They worked really hard so that they could pay for it. They worked really, really hard for me to be able to stay in treatment, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Isabella Santana's full essay is featured in the book Speaking Our Truths, available on all platforms where books are sold. It's also on the Media Rights website, where you can also download a free mental health toolkit. Just go to mediarights.org. The National Suicide Hotline is available 24 hours a day, every day, by calling 988.